Ask the Mayor. Your chance to ask the Mayor of Weymouth questions about the town and or anything else that you have concerns about. Ask the Mayor is pre-recorded. And now it's Mayor Bob Hedlund.
All right, and welcome back to a virtual episode of Ask the Mayor. I am your fill-in guest inquisitor and citizen advocate and editor of the show, Jeff Cummings. With me is Mary Heinrichs, the producer and director of Ask the Mayor, and of course, our very own Mayor, Mayor Bob Hedlund. How are we doing?
Hi, guys.
Hi, Mayor.
Another Ask the Mayor first here.
Absolutely. It looks pretty lonely in your office right now. Is anyone else in town hall right now?
In town hall? Oh, absolutely, yes. We've got, and it's a great opportunity to give a shout out. Some of the folks in the tax collector's office have really been going above and beyond because we've had to process tax payments. We're in that time of year, they're coming in, and that's helped us get a read on some of our revenue projections. They've been worked continuously through this, so that office has been staffed every day, even with the initial shutdown. We're in here doing a great job. We're rotating people in and out of certain departments, like procurement, obviously contracts that are coming through here. The chief of staff has been in at times. During the height of the shutdown, he was coming in on weekends. Just to give you an idea on how crazy some of the stuff we've had to do, for instance, Ted was coming in on weekends, dealing with the mail, opening, sorting mail, and taking it home, scanning it, sending it to the various departments, appropriate departments. I was in quarantine because of, initially I did a round of quarantine coming into contact with someone who tested positive early on in this whole cycle. Then later, I had it, so I was obviously at home for a little bit, and folks who came in contact with me here ended up having to quarantine. I quickly found out that I am not suited for working from home. I don't have the, it's like someone who sets up a home gym, right? Or buys a home gym piece of equipment and it ends up being a clothes hanger instead of an actual exercise device. That's kind of my problem. So I was coming in here and it worked out well because I was the only one on my floor for a couple of weeks. And then Ted would start interacting. And then as things got busy with the budget, we found that, he and I had to both be in here. And then we're rotating the women that answer the phone. Before that, they were just checking the voicemail every 20 minutes and following up with calls that way. And so there's been different departments, different rotations. We are bringing people in next week and having a more robust presence here and a more robust schedule, still taking a lot of precautions. Seems
like there was a lot even during the couple months that we've been kind of shut down. I had two good friends that gave birth. And they called in a panic and said, can I even get a birth certificate right now if I went to town hall? I feel like there's a lot of, questions that are up in the air about what services are still available. Yeah, basically everything. I mean, the information we put out before, call first, please. If you want to deal with the building department, call first. They'll make the arrangements. The clerk, she's been available. I need her to notarize certain contracts that I'm involved in. So their office has obviously had a presence. You can still get most of your business done. Just obviously a little patience and call ahead is the best thing to do rather than just knock on the door. Door's locked. The janitor is serving as a butler. He's answering the door when the buzzer goes off if there's a FedEx delivery or something, or if someone has a question. But we've found that we've gotten through this pretty well. And some of the remote departments, obviously have been impacted. Recreation, unfortunately, yesterday I signed off on some furloughs. Because, we're not issuing permits. There's a lot we're not doing in that department. Same with elder services. We actually had to lay someone off yesterday. So we've had to make sacrifices given the revenue numbers, most departments anyway. And then
DPW, we're trying to maintain as robust a schedule. We obviously have paving projects going on. You see the sweepers out. We're still working on a lot of facilities that they maintain. So trying to keep as much normalcy as possible.
Absolutely. I know we actually got a couple questions from our most prolific.
Hey, you had a question about the hat.
Absolutely. I didn't know if this was intentional or not. I was noticing the Great Esker Park hat, and I think you even have a Back River shirt on, maybe. I thought I saw a couple fish on it. And
so the Back River Watershed Association gave the shirt to me, I don't know when. I was cleaning up my desk yesterday, and it was under a pile of stuff. So I apologize for that, Linda. And I wanted to get it on. I think at least I've been spending more time outdoors, isolated in an isolated fashion, trying to avoid the places everyone's going, but getting out and walking through some of the parks that we've left open, the passive recreation locations. So the shirt was a coincidence today, but the hat I did put on in honor of Back River Bob. And thank you for showing the development update segment where we had our encounter with him. He really made a difference with the park and all the volunteer work that he did.
Yeah, it was just a short time meeting him, but he seemed like a really great guy. Lots of laughs, great attitude, and I know that he did a lot of good for the park.
I was actually surprised to see how old he actually was because he was pretty spry. So
I was thinking the same thing.
Getting out into the outdoors on a regular basis, I hope.
I was thinking the same exact thing. And I guess along those lines too, I know that a lot of people are still getting a bit of cabin fever, and so the most of the passive recreation is still open, but just maybe to clarify, the parks and playgrounds are still closed.
Now, is that a question from you as a citizen advocate or from the viewers?
I'm taking my very first lead from Jim Melody here and making up my own question.
Yeah, so a lot of people have weighed in on that. So I guess it's a great question for the citizen inquisitor because, no matter what we do, we're going to get criticized one way or the other. Some communities have taken some extreme steps. We tried to find a balance. We kept, obviously we immediately shut down playgrounds and things like that, but we kept open some of the larger facilities, and we expected people to social distance. We think it's worked out relatively well. We did get complaints. Someone would drive by Legion Field and see people clustered. It tends to happen more with younger folks who may not be taking it as seriously. But we, over time, think we've worked this out. It's been a work in progress. We kept some rec staff on who have been basically serving as monitors. If you go to Legion Field right now, for instance, you'll see recreation staff that are enforcing some of those social distancing guidelines. So we felt it was important that people get out. I'm not a doctor, but one thing we know is that exercise helps you in fighting off this virus. So we want people to get out. We want people to get fresh air. We want people to exercise, but also we don't want people clustered. So we tried to maintain that balance. One development you might find interesting that we have found is in monitoring the fields, especially at Lovell, the hardest issue that the staff has had to deal with in terms of enforcing that social distancing has come from out-of-towners.
Oh.
And we have found that because places like Cohasset and Hingham have shut down even their large fields, the word is out and people are coming to to Weymouth from Hingham and Cohasset. And there was actually a video on, I didn't see it, I didn't see it I'm not on Instagram, but one of our rec employees broke up a group and then finally had to ask them to leave, and they gave them a hard time back, and they filmed it on Instagram, and they tried to spin it on Instagram that they had to deal with an old mean guy in Weymouth. Now these kids were from Hanover. And they put the Instagram post up. I guess they got about 20,000 views right out of the gate.
Wow. But
it was great because everybody that commented were pushing back on the kids, calling them idiots for not social distancing. So it kind of blew up on them. And the same staffer actually got hassled last week or 2 weeks ago from a group from Cohasset that was using Lovell.
Wow.
So in reaction to that, we have signs up. I think they went up as of today that we're trying to enforce the fields are just to be used by Weymouth residents only. And we actually are, and we did in that case with the kids from Cohasset, which is how we found out. We had to get the police involved, and we ran plate numbers, and we gave them the boot.
Wow.
So we're going to be stringent and upfront with the signage, and the police are working in sync with the rec staff, and we'll have less people on the fields because we're kicking the out-of-towners off because they're the ones that we were getting, according to Recreation Department, the most grief from.
Sure.
Or the least cooperation, shall I say.
Sure. Well, along those lines, I know that Mary has a couple questions from Ed Hartnett about the pandemic and how the town's response to it.
We are recording. It's May 7th. We're still about, 7 weeks in on the pandemic and stay at home. So our most frequent inquisitor, Ed Hartnett, wrote a couple. When you first heard of the news about the virus, like many of us, what were your thoughts? Was there anything you wanted to do or could do as mayor to get ahead of that situation?
Yeah, good question. We talked a little about this in one of the updates we put on that WETC ran with Dan McCormick and myself, the town's health department director. I didn't really know what to make of it in the beginning. Like anything else, if you're not an expert on it, and you take it with a grain of salt one way or the other. I didn't really follow the H1N1 or whatever the last pandemic we had, but I do remember SARS distinctly. I was younger. I know that we took SARS lightly. This, I didn't, I think it was, I felt in my gut, based on what I was reading, that this was going to be more serious. But it was really not until early on when we pulled staff together to discuss this, and we had folks from South Shore Hospital in to brief us that, and this was early in the process. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but that was a significant wake-up call. And you probably saw the Ledger story where, it talked about Weymouth being a lot more proactive on some of the stuff than communities around us. And it was really based on that information we were getting directly from senior medical professionals, everyone from the president of the hospital to Dr. Tracy to the head of their infectious disease unit on down, on the severity of this and how this was something unique, unlike some previous pandemics. So that was kind of a wake-up call for me and staff, and why we did some of the things we did more early on. I kind of got a kick out of watching my friend Marty Walsh's press conferences where, he was coming around and talking about things that kind of we were already doing. Now, some of the stuff, that he's doing now, I don't necessarily agree with. So things vary from town to town. I think you should have that ability. Some things need to be a universal approach, but there are other things that I think you can make local decisions on. The president talking about the differences between states, I think, is an appropriate thing to talk about. Each state has different circumstances. Certainly New York is a heck of a lot different than what's going on in North Dakota, So that's the answer to Ed's question.
So he also says, now that the virus is here, arrived in our town, we face many challenges. What is your plan to make up the budget deficit? We as a town have been making so many strides the last couple of years, and I'm sure that the pandemic has derailed the train somewhat. What is the plan to get back on track? That's again from Ed Hartnett.
Well, we've been lucky. Just in the 4 years prior to this budget that I've been involved in, we're fortunate with a great financial team here. Chief of Staff Langell, who really doubles in some ways as the CFO also, which was a different structure that preceded us here. And we've changed all kinds of financial practices here in town. I inherited $1 million stabilization fund. We've got that up to over $8 million. The relationship on how we fund the schools has been radically changed. We were below net school spending. We've addressed that. There were continual structural deficits with the school department. We've fixed that. We've met school needs lists. So the good things that have happened have allowed us to be in a better position to cope with this. The big problem with this is we're in the early stages of this. Again, news this week on April state revenue drop-offs is brutal. Unprecedented since 1932 in terms of a one-time revenue drop here in the state, even accounting for inflation and everything else. So right now, the immediate impact's worse than 08. 08, I think, was probably a longer and more gradual problem. This is going to be a real, upfront problem that I don't think will last as long. But we have to brace ourselves for what's coming and what's going to continue to come, and brace ourselves for that uncertainty. The budget that we put forward that obviously got a lot of coverage this week, and thank you, WETC. I know you covered, the school committee meeting. You covered our presentation to town council previous Monday, and then the budget sub, which is held this week. And we've been able to put forward a level services budget. Now that wasn't without pain. We got 1.7 million in cuts on the town side. There's only 3 departments that get increases. And, a lot of that is due to collective bargaining and contractual agreements like police and fire. And then in the schools, we kind of went the extra step. Schools get 70% of all the increases that we're doing. And that was in hopes of preserving jobs, providing, them the footing for a level services budget, and allowing us to at least get through to July and see what things look like from then. The chief of staff, indicated that if there is a windfall somewhere from the federal government or the state, which right now isn't looking too good from what we're hearing from the state, we would go back and do a supplemental budget. So we have that flexibility. That's not unprecedented. There are supplementals that are done every year to varying degrees, whether it was the K administration, my administration. You have to switch things up at times as circumstances dictate. But we feel pretty good that the provisions we've made here get us through, the remainder of this fiscal year and going into 21. I mean, obviously, I don't want to. I guess I would be remiss to note that we've gotten tremendous cooperation from all department heads. So the budget we put in place, involves layoffs at recreation, involves layoffs at elder services. They've worked with us. They understand the situation. They're comfortable in the direction we're going. I would be remiss to note, obviously, we're having a difference of opinion with the schools because their budget request was about 2.2 million more than what we can give. But again, it's how you use that overall 75 plus million, whatever the number is right now, in the school department budget, and how you prioritize that. And that's where the philosophical, obviously, disagreement is occurring right now.
Sure. Obviously, it's not a great situation across the board, but we do have a few other questions that are off the topic of COVID-19, but I didn't know if there's anything else while you have the floor. I didn't know if there's anything else you want to.
No, I hope we can get to those other questions because I know it's been a while since we taped.
Sure. Well, on that note, too, we want to remind people to.
And by the way, we have to note the absence of our regular citizen advocate.
I know. Do you happen to know where he is?
And this is a pretty streamlined process. This is going good.
Well, he evidently had a medical appointment, and obviously with a lot of difficulty lining up a doctor's appointment, he was able to get one on the day we were filming this. So.
I do have one request, however, though.
Sure.
You're going to be the host. I'm staring at that piano before. You got to tickle a few ivories before.
I knew you were going to say that. Now remember, I have master editing control, so it might sound a little different in the post-production. I assume that Jim just didn't know how to operate Zoom, and that's why he deferred to us to host the show.
You're in a band, right?
Yes.
And you play Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. I know it was on your set list, right?
Wow, God, well, yeah, studied up.
Is there a heavy keyboard element to that?
Not too much. I'm kind of the catch-all in the band. Backup singer, and play just a little bit of piano.
All right, so in your famous band that you're in, everyone knows in Weymouth, the new band, right?
No, that's our arch rivals. No, we love the new band. We're B-side Charlie. Donnie
that's
Norton's
right. I'm
the new
sorry.
band.
I'm sorry.
That's
Like
all
the
good.
Beatles and the Stones of Weymouth. What's the most prolific piano part that you do in your set list?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Really? What after that? That's overplayed now. I don't want to hear it.
God, we do a.
Well, you can think about it. You can think about the remainder of the show, and that's going to be, you know how we always end the show with a song. That's going to be our outtake.
Perfect.
All right.
And if you want to submit your own questions or your own requests for songs that my band should play, submit them to askmayorbob@gmail.com. We have a question from Beverly Demora, another frequent writer to the show. She says, "Dear Mayor, I know that the demolition of Chapman Middle School has begun. I was wondering if there will be any video or snapshots of the demolition and construction that can be shared out to the community. Many people in town have wonderful memories of this building, and I think it would be nice to see the various milestones of this project that might be shared on social media." From Beverly Demora.
Yes. So, if you followed the progress of the library, that has been the case, and it'll be a similar situation with Chapman. We're at the stage now. You know, I don't think we're going to want to have any video updates of abatement work. Guys in hazmat suits taking asbestos, you know, out of crawl spaces right now. You know,
Nor do I want to film
basically
that.
no, you wouldn't want to film it either. But basically, that's the phase we're in. But the construction managers and our OPMs like doing that because they're proud of their work. It's a good advertisement for them too, you know, which is also why they do it. The architects, same thing. So you've seen that happen with the library. You'll see it with Chapman.
Great.
And you may even see it with Chapman at a greater degree.
Great.
And we had a couple other little, you know, thoughts on things we were going to be doing. Unfortunately, that this pandemic put kind of a crimp in. Some more community-based stuff, but so watch for that, and I'm sure that'll be going up on WETC when it happens.
So this is from, I don't have the name of this person. It's kind of long-winded, but it's interesting. Just a short note to say hello and thank you for doing a good job as mayor. The reason for my letter, why are we not allowed to dig clams in the back river? Years ago, we would purchase bait licenses at town hall. We could use the clams and sea worms that were dug for bait, fishing for cod and flounder. My father-in-law would dig a bucket of clams, put them in a clam box, and allow 2 tide cycles to cleanse the clams before we would steam them and enjoy the clams. In all the years of eating back river clams, no one ever got sick. I don't know how she knows that. This was when the Agrico plant was in full operation in North Weymouth. Please consider reestablishing bait licenses as well as clam licenses to the citizens of Weymouth. Thank you for considering the above-mentioned matter.
Excellent. So I can't give a 1,000 definitive answer that will hold up in court, but I can give you the 95% solid answer here because I'm trying to think as I get the question for the first time, make sure I have all the regulatory entities that are involved in this. But we've had closures up and down the coast or the entire Massachusetts coast, and they fluctuate. And the state, there's a couple of regulatory entities within the state that make the determination what shellfish beds are allowed open. And just because of the characteristics of that location that she talks about, characteristics of the currents and the tides, etc. The location of non-point source infiltration, which the town, starting under the Madden administration, continuing under the Kay administration, and us. Less so with us because it's been major addressed, but we had, even into the 2000s, a lot of stormwater infiltration into the back river. Development update, you know, some of the work that we've shown in development update where we've taken on projects, capital projects to address that. The water quality has improved for instance. But you have factors even beyond the control of Weymouth. So the state does the testing, determines when the shellfish beds are at a level of contamination that are safe, and we go by that. We get that advisory. Off the top of my head right now, I don't know what the status is of what beds where. I was a little more in tune to that when I was in the legislature, in the Senate, because, we were dealing with a state regulatory body, and I had communities that were impacted up and down the coast from Duxbury to Weymouth all the time at different times. I do recall that the Weymouth shellfish beds were closed along the Back River for a long, long time. And because of all the non-point source work and the fact that in general, the Boston Harbor was getting a lot cleaner because of the MWRA Harbor Cleanup Project, it was big news back at one point in the 90s. When we opened up the beds for the first time in a long time, the state actually had Commissioner Peter Weber of Department of Environmental Management, I believe it was, come down for a ceremony. We were right along the end of River Street, over by just before the entrance of Webb State Park for a ceremony announcing the opening of those beds. And that was great news. And then that continued for a while. Unfortunately, we've seen closures since then. And I do think, off the top of my head again, this is the part I could stand to be corrected, that she is in fact, or the writer, she is in fact correct, that the beds are closed right now, but that's a determination by the state. But that's a problem up and down the coast. We've had red tide issues in the past couple of years that were pretty significant in a lot of areas up and down the coast. So again, state determination, you hope that, again, that'll be open at some point.
Will it be regulated by the town though, or is that a state regulation? Will there ever be licenses issued by?
No, we have technically like shellfish wardens that,
okay,
are there to enforce that, have to go by what the state regs are.
Okay.
Looks like we have time for a couple more. It looks like I have a quick one here from Kathy O'Day. It says, "Hi, Mayor Hedlund. I live on River Street and have noticed lots of trash on the ground as I drive by the Lane Beach parking lot, especially after a sunny weekend day. Is it possible to put large covered barrels in the parking lot or increase the number of barrels? Thank you," from Kathy.
Yeah, I know that we're getting a lot more use. Obviously, Lane Beach is a little bone of contention this week. I don't know if it's the same author of the question, but I've got a couple emails this week, people down in that neighborhood complaining because there's significantly more use at the beach. We've had problems in a couple of spots. Great Hill, for instance, we basically, it's gotten completely out of hand up there. We're now forced to lock the gates. We have electronic sign at the entrance of Lovell Street announcing that, and we've basically taken a sector guy and parked him up there from the police department. And it's had some effect over the last few weeks. I've gone up there a few times, and it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it was a burden on the neighbors on that street. So the cops have, the police department's gotten pretty aggressive up there. I do know that they've even towed a number of cars.
Wow.
Found some guys, uninsured, unregistered, that were hanging out up there. So they've gotten aggressive. And the problem is we got, kids. I did the same thing. I went out and hung out. Great Hill was one of the spots at times, but you push them out of there and they're congregating at another area. They're
Sure.
at the high school now. They're at Lane Beach. And then Lane Beach, you got just, families that want to get out and walk along and look at the water. So we kind of moved some enforcement down there too. The barrels are always a problem. If we need more capacity, I'll double check on that as soon as we get off the show with Rec. But, sometimes where we have barrels in isolated positions, people want to dump their household stuff there. So it's a constant battle on barrels. The more barrels you put out, the more stuff. We've had a huge problem in Great Esker Park. We got one neighborhood that backs up to Great Esker. I think you were there when we were doing development update.
Yep.
We've got one resident who obviously doesn't really care about his town that much, and drags the stuff from the house through an opening and leaves it on the pathway, and DPW has to go pick it up. I hope that's not an advertisement for people to do that, but we think he's a contractor and he takes job site stuff and dumps it in our park, and we got to go react.
Yeah.
It's a constant battle. So we'll take a look specifically. We are taking a look at Lane Beach actually this week, so that's why this is funny getting the message. But it was more on traffic and loitering and social distancing issues than it was trash barrels. But we'll add that to the list for Lane Beach.
Great.
Okay, so this one is landscaping start times. Now that the spring is here, my neighborhood will be seeing landscape workers once the pandemic is over. I believe the town allows start times at 7 a.m. with a courtesy not to start until 8. I don't know if that's on the books. I was wondering if we can modify this law to allow start times at 8 a.m. with a courtesy request to start at 9 for residential accounts. Landscape vendors can certainly start at 7 a.m. for the commercial accounts, but let's hold off for the residential accounts. This is from Dan Curran of South Weymouth. What do you think? He said.
Yeah, not only that, they can do it on Saturday too, under our current bylaws. I mean, that would be a discussion we would have to have with the council. I can start that discussion. Personally, I'm with the guy. Dan, you said?
Yeah.
Curran.
My old address, I moved a few years ago around the corner. I had a neighbor who was on a very distinctly different schedule than me. And I'll never forget, I was actually sick that week. I was really under the weather. And I thought the Russians had invaded. And I looked out my window and it was like the Normandy invasion. I counted 7 large vehicles assembled to do tree work. One of the trees hung over my yard, practically over my bedroom, and it was 6:47 a.m. They got a little jump start in 13 minutes. I thought my house was going to fall down. I thought I was having a weird dream. So I can sympathize with them. And they were there for like 3 days working. That was insane. Had to alter my schedule a little bit, but something to look at. But there's a lot of pushback on that. Believe me, from the working man that's out there early, pushing back.
Sure.
There's a lot of, especially landscapers in their peak season. Not only are they starting early, they're going late in that window of time they have. It's a tough one. I think that would require a lot of dissemination and input than abruptly changing something that's there, even though I'm with them.
Sure.
Jeff, get through those
And
last
maybe while we're at it, right, we can do what Lexington did and talk about leaf blowers.
You're right.
How would that go over in Weymouth?
2 more questions.
Do you want to squeeze them in? Yeah, we got.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be an Ask the Mayor show if we didn't have a question about Comcast. So I got one here from Ed.
Are you serious?
I'm not making them. I would love
Are you
to.
trying to be like Seinfeld here and work this? Give me a break.
Groundhog Day. Do you want me to read it or?
I reserve the right from now on never to answer another Comcast/Verizon question. Although, yeah, we do have an update, kind of, sort of. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, it says, hello, Mayor Hedlund. I have one very simple question that I know you get a lot by watching your show on WTC. What would it take to invite another internet, cable TV, and phone provider into our town to compete with Comcast? The monthly rates have been steadily rising since last September, when the monthly rate was $182 to its present rate at $219, an increase of over $37. This is unacceptable in a blue-collar value-based town like Weymouth, whose residents pay a strong value on a good value. Perhaps a competing entity would give a company like Comcast a run for its money if given the opportunity. Thanks for your consideration.
So I know the big picture thing we've answered a million times, as he knows. But, we do have a little bit of an update on this, so it's worth talking about. But I did early on when I took office, so back in 2016, one of the first things we did, we had a high-ranking gentleman in here from Verizon to kind of answer all our questions. It was contact I had from my State House days, but he came down to discuss it, explained why that investment is not being made anywhere, and nor is any other company going to come in and wire a community. Shortly thereafter, I had, and I've told this story on the show before, an old high school classmate of mine who is in this industry, who is working on alternative projects, put a bug in my ear. We did some research. We didn't have the population base to initiate what he kind of explained could be a pilot project and how we could go about providing an alternative. Subsequent to that, we had a Quincy City Councilor, I'm forgetting which one right now, take a great interest in this. They looked at a model out in the Midwest that occurred, the same one that my friend pitched to me. That councilor stumbled on it, took an interest in it, and they started the process in Quincy. And I had been told that we didn't have the customer base, and that if you were to kind of team up with a place like Quincy, that you'd have that volume that this particular venture group could kind of make this investment. I put Bob O'Connor, who is the town's former DPW director that's been doing some work here, started under the K administration as the energy coordinator. He's overseeing the street light transition to the LED. We bought the street lights. We're saving a ton of money every year now.
Sure.
On that whole project. He's coordinated the green community grants. So I put him on that. He's been having meetings with Quincy. We're in the early stages of this. But this is the only avenue we see. And I think the light bulb just went off here, speaking of lights. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea because this is probably, wouldn't you say this is the number one question we get?
Sure.
Yes.
How about we have WETC do a development update on this, and I'll get O'Connor in here and the people that can actually talk on this because it's complicated subject matter. But basically, we would be wiring the entire town. It's kind of like an open highway where then you can charge, a different company that wants to get in to provide the end use service. Is the short layman's explanation of this. It is costly, but there's a way to do it. Kind of what we did with the buying of the street lights is a model. But that economy of scale that we'll be getting with Quincy gives us that ability to entertain these proposals, which is what we're working on.
Great.
This new provider.
Why did you guys smirk when I suggested a development update?
Well, I think
Because I'm always thinking of the visual, Mayor. What are we going to do? Shoot telephone poles for 2 weeks?
What did she do? Hit the mute button while she was answering my question?
Yeah.
I think Jeff muted me.
No, I thought you get muted yourself.
What is so funny about getting more information out to our constituents?
Oh, I think it's great. I'm always looking for visuals, that's all.
With that one, you won't be a heck of a lot of visuals. Jeff can drive around and take pictures of wires going from pole to pole.
We can use the drone.
Beautiful. Would this new, would there be room for WETC on a new channel with this new provider?
Now I know why you're laughing. That actually, hey, that's a serious problem, as you know. And that would be a problem because, it would diminish Comcast customer base, which
Absolutely.
means less coming to help us do programming like this. But, and by the way, with the diminished circulation of newspapers, you guys take on a more important role in getting information out. So that's something to look at.
That'd be great.
No, I mean, that's a concern of mine.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do think we provide a good service, and hopefully we'd be able to stick around.
I mean, if you don't have a newspaper covering a meeting and you're not there to record that meeting, we're in trouble.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I got one more question before we wrap up our first virtual episode here from Mr. X, nonetheless. Greetings, Mayor. The Weymouth website is a great site for residents to keep up with important information. Is it possible to include hypertext links for you and town council members that would give a brief bio? I'm not suggesting any personal identifiable information. Regards, Mr. X. So I think he's trying to get a little more bio on you and the town council members on the town website.
It's kind of cool. I like it.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get one on me.
I don't know if he's looking for like, do you like long walks on the beach or anything like that, but yeah.
No, I know, but I mean, like, I got a long public record, so Google, and you'll
Absolutely.
get 10 years worth of information, reading material, but it would be kind of neat to have a profile on, on the councilors too. And then, it would be even kind of cooler. You could do a rotating thing and kind of like pick a, department head of the month and put up a profile on them and stuff. I like that.
Yeah, that's great. I like that a lot. Could be easy enough.
Okay,
The
we're
next
like
time I see
long
my-
over. We're
The
way
next
over.
time I see, what's that, Mary?
We're way over.
We have only ourselves to wrap each other up. Where normally we're being.
Well, next time I see my IT department, I'm going to get them working on that, and it will be post-pandemic. It's going to be a little while, but I like doing that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, great. Well, if you have any more questions for the next episode, make sure you send them off to askmayorbob@gmail.com. Again, that's askmayorbob@gmail.com.
Any closing words, Mr. Mayor?
No, I'm going to save that closing word time for Jeff on the piano. Let's go. Get over there.
All right. Luckily, I am wearing pants, so that's good. This is, let's see.
Hey, let's jump.
Is that all right?
Yep.
I'll save the solo for the next episode, yeah.
Eddie Van Halen's got nothing on you.
Oh, I appreciate that. All right, thanks everyone, and make sure you stay safe out there.
If you have a question, please email the mayor at askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's askmayorbob@gmail.com. Maybe your question will be answered on the next episode of Ask the Mayor.